Hello and welcome to Module 5, how to write effective introductions and overview paragraphs. So let's look at what we're going to do in this module. We're going to review the paragraph structure that I showed you in the previous module. We're going to look at why introductions and overviews are so important. How to paraphrase. This is how we write our introductions. We paraphrase. So I'm going to show you lots of ways we can paraphrase in Task 1. We're going to review how to identify main features, and then we're going to look at how to write an effective overview, the most important part of your whole essay. So let's look at what we did in the last module. We looked at why planning is important and a step-by-step guide to how to plan effectively. We looked at the overall 4-paragraph structure, and we looked at lots and lots of examples to help show you how it is easy to identify key features. And now we're going to take those key features and put them into our overview. But before that, I just want to review the overall structure with you because it's very important. We're going to be talking about this a lot today. So the first paragraph, paragraph number 1, is your introduction. Then you would skip a line and start your new paragraph, which is your second one, which is your overview. Third paragraph is your details. And fourth paragraph is a second details paragraph. I've been getting lots of questions from people saying, does the overview have to be the second paragraph? No, if you want, you can put the overview here. It doesn't matter. It will not affect your score in any way. The reason why I like to put the overview second is because you will be detailing lots of the key features in paragraphs 3 and 4, and it's just much easier to describe them generally and then get into detail rather than talking about details first and then describing things in more general terms. But if you want to put the overview at the end, that's no problem. So let's now look at how many sentences you should use for each of the paragraphs. Introduction is just going to be 1 sentence. Your overview is going to be 2 sentences. And then the details can be 3 or 4 sentences, each of them 3 or 4 sentences. So we're going to focus mostly on these 2 things today, just how to write an introduction and how to write an overview. So introductions are very easy to write and should be 1 sentence only. This is the easiest part of the whole IELTS test. They're easy to write because all you have to do is paraphrase the question statement. Paraphrasing means writing something again, but with different words, so that it has the same meaning. So it must have the same meaning as before, but it has different words. Don't worry if you don't understand this. We're going to look at it in much more detail. So first we need to know what the question statement is. So as I've said before, every single question has this bit in red. But before that, we always have the question statement. And here, for this question, is our question statement. And it's always the first thing in the question, in the box. So in this box, the first thing is always the question statement. So we need to paraphrase this bit that I've highlighted in yellow. And for this one, just to show you that it's exactly the same, first part of the question is this, and this is our question statement. So the bit that I've highlighted, that needs to be paraphrased. So it never changes. Every single question is like this. The first part in the box, we take it. It's always in the same. It's always as 1 paragraph. Could be 1 sentence, could be 2 sentences, but it's always 1 paragraph. So we need to take this and paraphrase it. So what is paraphrasing? We need to write the question statement again, but with different words. So how do we do that? We can do this in several ways. We can use synonyms, we can use different word forms, or we can use examples. So we're going to look at each of these in more detail now. So synonyms. These are different words that have the same meaning. You should know what these mean because they're very, very important, not just for writing, but for listening, reading, and speaking as well. So let's look at some examples. Man, male, same meaning, different words. A country, a nation. So where I'm from, Ireland, Ireland is my country and it's also my nation. It's the same meaning, different words. For task 1, a graph, bar chart, same thing. Line chart, line graph, same thing. However, there are two types of synonyms. There are direct synonyms and there are loose synonyms. So you have to be very, very careful with these. What we want is we want direct synonyms and we don't want loose synonyms. So direct synonyms are words that mean exactly the same thing, like woman and lady or woman and female. They mean exactly the same. But let's look at some examples here, and this is one of the biggest mistakes that students make. They use loose synonyms and they don't really mean the same thing. So you might see phone in the question and you might replace it with gadgets. Gadgets can mean anything. It can mean an electronic device that you use in your kitchen. It could mean a computer. It could mean something you use in your car. It just means, gadget means anything really electronic that we use. Phone is much more specific. It is something that we use to make and receive calls and send text messages, and now we have smartphones, which are a little bit different again. So if you replaced phone with gadget, you would be wrong. Phone is a gadget, but gadget means so many different things. It's not specific enough. Same with this, sport, exercise. Now, sports are things like football, swimming, tennis, of course, and exercise is the physical act of doing those things. So I can go swimming later on today, but I'm not doing a sport. Sport means you compete against other people. You're in competition with other people. I can go walking to the shops today, and that is just exercise, but it is not a sport. There's no sport where people compete to walk to the shop. So these mean two different things. Also, a common mistake is something like young person and a child. A child is someone under 18, so between 0 and 18 as a child. A young person can be someone in their 20s, a 25-year-old, 26-year-old, 27-year-old might be a young person. So it's not, this one is not specific enough. This is very specific. Okay, so be very careful with loose synonyms. Only use direct synonyms. So let's look at how we can use synonyms in a real question. Let's look at an example. So chart, we'd replace it with graph. So what we do is we just take the word and we replace it with a direct synonym. Shows, displays. So we replace this word with displays. So it would be the graph below displays. Number, amount. Men and women, males and females. Further education, third level education. Weather, if. So you'll see that all of the synonyms that I have replaced here are direct synonyms. They mean exactly the same thing. They're not loose synonyms that kind of mean the same thing. And you'll also notice that there are large sections of the question that I haven't been able to use synonyms for, and that's fine. Some parts, like Britain, I can't think of a synonym for Britain. I can't think of a synonym for three. I can't think of a synonym for periods. I can't think of a synonym for full-time. That's fine. You won't be able to think of synonyms for every single word. If you do and you try, you will make lots of mistakes. So only change the words that you know are direct synonyms and you're sure that the meaning is the same and they're easy to do. Don't spend 5 minutes trying to think of a synonym for part-time, for example. That's just a waste of time. So there are other ways that we can paraphrase, and the other way, one of the other ways, is word form. So there are 4 main types of word form. There are verbs, there are nouns, there are adjectives, and there are adverbs. For example, the verb to avoid, the noun is avoidance, the adjective is avoidable, and the adverb is avoidably. So we can change these around because they basically mean the same thing, and that helps us paraphrase the question. We can also change the tense, so we could change studying to which is a continuous tense, to study, which is just the base form of the word, or studied, which is the past simple. However, these often change the grammar, so you need to be very careful. So especially with these, when you change a verb to a noun or a noun to an adjective, the grammar will change a little bit. Sometimes it won't, but most of the time it will change. So you have to read the whole sentence and make sure that it makes sense. There's no point in replacing a word only to make a grammar mistake. So just be careful with these. So let's look at how we could use the word forms. The only word form that I can change here is studying. So I'm going to change it to either study or studied, because I can't think of a synonym for studying. Maybe learning, but it's a bit loose, so we're not going to take any chances. So we're just going to change studying to study or studied. The other way we can paraphrase is to use examples. So an example is Britain. What is Britain? It is the countries England, Wales, and Scotland. England, Wales, and Scotland are examples of countries in Britain. Okay, so that's the only thing that we could use. And for example, if it said phone, we could use the example of an iPhone or an Android phone or a smartphone. These are all examples. So putting it all together, the graph displays the amount of males and females in third level education in England, Wales, and Scotland in 3 periods, and if they studied part or full time. So the thing you'll notice about this is some words I haven't changed. So for example, 3 periods. It is fine to copy some of the words. Lots of teachers tell the students you must change every single word. That is impossible for most students, and examiners don't expect you to do that. For example, they. If you don't want to change it, you don't have to change it. I've changed this slightly, part or full-time. So I couldn't think of any synonyms or any ways to change full-time or part-time, so I've just changed it a little bit by saying part or full-time. And I've also taken out below. There's no below here because I'm not talking about something below, so I can just take that out. Okay, so let's move on to another one. This is from a question. The pie chart below shows the main reasons why agricultural land becomes less productive. The table shows how these causes affected 3 regions of the world during the 1990s. So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to pause the video, get a piece of paper, and just think of some synonyms, how you could change maybe some word forms, and how you could use some examples, and how any other ways that you think that you could change this. So just pause the video and try it yourself. This will help you learn. So this is what I've done. The pie graph illustrates the primary reasons why farmland produces less over time. The table displays how these causes impacted 3 parts of the planet in the 90s. So pie chart, I've changed it to pie graph. This is gone. Shows, illustrates. So it normally says shows. So we can change shows with illustrates, or as I did in the last one, displays. We've kept the, of course, reasons, we've kept this one, but we've changed main to primary. So main and primary mean the same thing. Why we've changed it? Agricultural land is farming land. So we could say farmland or we could say farming land. So we've kept land, but we've changed agricultural to this. Becomes less productive. I couldn't think of a synonym, so I just changed the form a little bit. I changed productive, which is an adjective, to produces, which is a verb, kept less, and becomes, I've changed it to over time. So the table displays, instead of shows, displays how these causes, so I couldn't think of a way to change this, how these causes, so I've just kept that. Affected, impacted, means the same thing. 3 parts, 3 regions, and planet, world, and in the 90s instead of during the 90s. So there's lots of different ways that I have changed that paragraph so that it has the same meaning. So these have exactly the same meaning, but they have different words. And this is the very first thing that the examiner will see. So it is very impressive when somebody paraphrases the sentence correctly first time, and that's the first thing you read. The examiner knows that you probably know what you're doing, and it is a very good first impression to give the examiner. You also get extra marks for vocabulary because the examiner knows if you can paraphrase something, you have a very good vocabulary. And also if you change a few things in the sentences, it shows that you have a good grasp of grammar as well. So it is a very important thing to do. One thing I should say is it takes time to get used to them. When you first try them, you'll probably make a few mistakes, but like anything in life, if you practice it, you will get very, very good at it, and it will take you 1 minute, 2 minutes to write them each time. However, I should warn you, just because it lists a word as a synonym in a dictionary does not mean it is a direct synonym. Lots of students send me their essays on my correction service, and I mark the synonym as incorrect, and they say, but Cambridge Dictionary said it's a synonym. Just because a dictionary says it's a synonym does not mean it's a direct synonym. If you don't know, just copy the word. If you can't think of a word, you can't think of a synonym, you don't know how to change it, copy the word. It is better to copy the word and have less range than to try and use a word you're not sure about and make a mistake. So overviews. These are the most important part of your whole Task 1 essay. Why are they the most important part? Because it clearly states in the marking criteria, a Band 6 answer presents an overview with information appropriately selected. So if you don't select the correct information, you don't select the key features, you can't get above a Band 5. You'll get a Band 5. But just because you select the key features doesn't mean that you'll get a very high score. What you need to do is your overview needs to be clear. It needs to be easy to read, easy to understand, of main trends, differences, or stages. Now, stages, you don't have to worry about this yet. Stages is about process diagrams, and we're going to do a whole lesson on process diagrams in Module 11, so don't worry about stages. What we need to worry about is main trends and differences. So we don't have to include main trends and differences. It doesn't say and. It might be main trends and differences, but it just might be just main trends or just differences. As we will see later on in this module, main trends is normally when you get a graph over time. Differences is normally when you get a graph that's not over time. So you need to identify 2 to 4 of the key features from the graph, the pie chart, whatever it is. Could be 2 key features, could be 3, could be 4. You need to write them in a separate paragraph, and it does not matter where you put it. So it doesn't matter if it's paragraph 2 or paragraph 4. It doesn't matter. The most important thing is it is separate. And it should be 2 sentences only. By keeping your answer, your overview to 2 sentences only, it will stop you including too much detail, and it will focus your mind on only including the most important things, and it to be very, very clear. There should be no data or any details. Dates are okay, but there should be no percentages or any data from the graph. It's okay to include some dates sometimes, but any other time you shouldn't include any details. So let's review identifying the main features. It's normally the most obvious thing, and you need to look at the big picture, the overall picture, not looking at small details. You need to look at the big picture, as big a picture as possible. You need to think about purpose. If it's over time, it will normally be a general trend. If not over time, it's more likely to be something like the biggest, the smallest, and comparisons. But treat each graph differently. Don't just look at the biggest and the smallest and look for comparisons. Each graph has a different set of values. Each graph needs to be looked at differently. So let's look at this one. We need to identify between 2 and 4 key features and then report them generally in an overview. So the first thing we notice about this is it's over time. So we're thinking about general trends, and there are only 4 things: road, water, rail, and pipeline, how goods are transported. So we need to look at the general trend. So this one goes up, this one goes down and then up, and then down and then up, so that fluctuates. This one goes up, and this one goes up. So what we can say is road, water, and pipeline, they all go up, and rail fluctuates. And that's all we need to do. There are 4 things, and we can easily express those 4 things by just stating the general trends for each of them. So this is my overview. Overall, goods carried by road, on boats, and through pipes all displayed an upward trend over the entire period. The exception to this was rail, which fluctuated throughout the period. So there's a few things I want you to notice about this overview. There's no data, there are only 2 sentences, and I started it with overall. You should start every overview with overall. This indicates to the examiner that this is your overview paragraph, and it makes their job much easier. So there's 4 elements: road, boats, pipes, and rail. These were the 4 things in the graph. Only 2 sentences, no data, and their general trends over time. And it's the most obvious things. It's easy. Okay, 3 of them go up, 1 of them fluctuates. Every time I give that particular question to my students, they get too complicated. They start looking for comparisons and start writing very, very complex things. You don't have to do that. It's the most easy thing. 3 of them go up, 1 of them fluctuates. That's it. You'll also notice that I have changed some of the wording. So instead of saying travel by water, I've said on boats, because to travel by water you have to go by boats. And instead of pipeline, I've said through pipes. So I've just changed the language a little bit, which is always good to do. So let's look at this question. Now, the number one thing that students do whenever they see a question like this is they start to read the data. They get lost in the data. You shouldn't do that. What you first should do is read this to understand it. Don't look at any of the data. So this is the percentages of mobile phone owners using various mobile phone features. Okay, so here are the features. So these are the different reasons why people use mobile phones. And then it's over 3 years. So it's not over a long period of time. It's just 3, so 2006, 2008, 2010. Okay, so if we now look at the data, it's very obvious that making calls is the main reason people use mobile phones. 100%, 100%, 99%. So this is already, we can see that this is much higher than the rest of the figures. So one of our main features is going to be that making calls is the main feature that people use their mobile phones for. Then we need to look a little bit at the data. So this goes up, 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 and this one goes up. So there's another main feature. Making calls was the most significant, but all of the others, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, they all go up. And we don't need to say take photos went up, play games went up, search internet went up, record video went up. We don't need to do that. We just say, apart from making calls, all other features increased between 2006 to 2010. So that's 2 things that we have. So is there anything else that is significant about these numbers? So 66 to 76, that's not really significant. 73 to 79, that's not very significant. 17 to 41, so that's more than double. Okay, so we'll highlight this one. Search the internet from 0 to 73, so that's massive. 12 to 26, this is not significant, and no data to 35, that's not very significant. So searching the internet is our third thing. Searching the internet showed the biggest increase from 2006 to 2010, and they are our 3 key features. Here is my overview. Overall, of course, we're going to use overall. The primary reason people used their mobile phones was to call someone. However, during this time there was a significant increase in the use of other features, with searching the internet displaying the most dramatic increase. So there are three elements. Three elements are: calling someone was the primary reason. There's an increase in the other features. That's number two. And searching the internet displayed the most dramatic increase. That's number three. So three elements: two sentences, no data, and it's only the most significant data. So these three things are the most significant things. If you went back to, if we go back here and you just looked at all this data and you didn't do it properly, so you didn't look at it in sequence, so the title first and then the reasons, and then looked at it in the years, the way I showed you in the previous module, you'd still be looking at all these numbers and they wouldn't mean anything. So if you get a table with lots and lots of data, or you get a graph, a line graph or a bar chart with lots and lots and lots of data, just stay calm, read the title, look at what the different things represent, and pick out the three most significant things, or the four most significant things. Now here we're going to look at when we have two different graphs. So here we have a line graph and here we have a table. So if we look at the line graph, it's over time, so it's over 100 years. And we can see that agriculture went up, industrial use went up, and domestic use went up. Agriculture obviously goes up a lot more than industrial, than domestic, but that's three things about one graph. Are we going to say agricultural goes up a lot, then industrial use goes up steadily, and then domestic use doesn't really go up until 1970? No, that's too much detail. So the main thing we're going to say is all three, agriculture, industry, and domestic, they all go up. That's the one thing from that graph. So now we need to look at one thing from this graph. So what is significant about this? Brazil has a bigger population than Congo. That's not a big surprise. Brazil is one of the biggest countries in the world with the highest population in the world, so that's not that significant. Irrigated land, so this is land that they put water on to grow crops. Brazil has much more than Congo. But again, this isn't surprising because it has a much bigger population. Water consumption per person, so per person, that's the key there. 359 cubic meters, 8 cubic meters. So this is significant. So a normal person in Brazil in 1 year consumed this amount, and a normal person in Congo only consumed this amount. So this is the most significant thing. Brazilian people consume far more water than people from Congo. So let's look at the overview. Overall, so of course overall, water use increased in all three sectors. Brazilians use far more water per capita than people who live in Congo. So very, very simple. One thing about one graph and one thing about the other. That's very, very simple. Keep it as simple as possible. The big, big picture, the most significant things. So let's review some of the golden rules of writing overviews. Start with overall, so you're always going to begin your overview with overall. Never include any data. Report key features only, the most significant features, the most important features. 4 or less elements, so 4 or less things. Sometimes only 2 things, sometimes 3 things. And 2 sentences only. 2 sentences will make you prioritize, and it will make you only pick the most important things. So let's review what we did in this module. We looked at why introductions and overviews are important. Introductions is the first thing the examiners see, and it also helps you get higher marks for vocabulary. Overviews, you cannot get a high score unless you write a good overview. We looked at how to paraphrase using synonyms or using different word forms, using examples, in order to change the question statement into our introduction. So our introduction should be the paraphrase. And then finally, we looked at how to take key features and write them generally in an overview paragraph. The next module, we're going to move on to the final paragraphs in your Task 1 answer, which is how to write effective details paragraphs. I hope you find this useful. Thank you very much. Goodbye.